Welcome. This is the board certification program webinar. My name is David Morelli, and I am so excited that you're here. Prospanica, as you know, is an amazing organization helping to raise Latino and Latina leaders in the world to fulfill their dreams, to get connected with other organizations for employment, et cetera, and to connect the community together. On this webinar, what we're going to be going through are a number of qualities that you'll be sort of exploring. We have some great opportunities to hear from seasoned people who have gone through the sort of process of their own growth here. And we're going to be diving into what is a leadership program, particularly around board certification, and what might it mean for you. But in order to do that, let's get in there. We are partnered together. I'm a lead faculty member of this program at the University of Denver. We've paired with Prospanica and partnered with them to bring this to you today. It is something that you'll learn about, but regardless of whether you decide to do anything about what you hear today on the sort of program side, I am so excited because we have powerful guests who have the inside look at what it takes to succeed as a Latino or Latina leader in the world. And so I'm excited to get to that. So let's jump ahead here. So if you want to know more about what we're talking about today, you're going to go to prospanica.org /board leadership. That's where you can find all the information about this. If you have questions along the way during the webinar, what you'll do is in your chat box on the lower right-hand side, you can submit those questions or submit a chat. And that's where we'll have somebody, Evan, who will be working with us and be reading questions towards the end. So you can submit questions there. And then we have a special guest, the Honorable Carrie M. Dominguez. I have just gotten to know her, and I have to tell you, she is phenomenal. You're going to get the benefit of her experience. And she has a wide range of experiences from board leadership to governmental leadership to corporate leadership. I'm so excited to bring her to you. And we also have another special guest, Jose Feliciano, not the musician, but a leader who has gone through the program when we launched it last year so that you can sort of get the inside experience of what it's like and what might be available to you from the beginning side of thinking about it all the way to having now taken it. So he'll give you those insights. Before we get going, I want to share a little bit about who I am, just so you know, like, who is this guy? So I've been in executive coaching and leadership development for over 20 years. Again, my name is David Morelli. I have a podcast that has 1.2 million subscribers, which is kind of fun. I've worked at a startup technology company where I went in and coached all of the organization. At the time, they had 60 people, and we're worth about $35 million. And 5 years later, having coached that organization, they're now at $2 billion. So been on an accelerated ride, and I was the SVP of strategy and talent development, which is the combination of how do you grow a business with the talent that you have. And then I went through my executive MBA at the University of Denver, and then ran their executive development. I was executive director of executive education, and now I'm a professor there as well. So before we get into the interview, I just want you to understand that our brains are the thing that sometimes gives us a little bit of difficulty. The biggest difficulty is fear, and we will run into things that we're afraid of in life. And sometimes the very thing that we're called to do brings up fear in the limbic system of the brain. There's another part called the amygdala. That the job of fight or flight in general is to try and keep you safe. And yet, growth requires us to step forward sometimes. And so when our brains get fearful, we lose 10 to 15 IQ points. And just for contrast, research shows that when people are high on marijuana, it only goes down by 5 points. So we're 2 to 3 times as dumb when we have fear, uncertainty, or doubt running our lives. And so as you go to grow, you might think about your comfort zone, and the edge of your comfort zone is always built with a wall of fear. And so therefore, it's important for you to understand how to face your fears and how to grow anyways. And we will have the Honorable Carrie M. Dominguez with us, who will guide us through her journey of what she did in order to get to where she is today. And I can't wait for you to get a chance to meet her. Before we get there, I wanted to share with you one model that I found incredibly helpful. Often it's important for us to think about mastering a certain skill set that we have. And once we've mastered that skill set, to expand the skills that we have. And so in order to grow and build in your careers, you have to think about, what do you want to master? And then what do you want to expand into? Thinking about that wall of your comfort zone being built of fear. You have to walk through your fear in order to grow. So we're going to be looking at empowering leaders at the board level. And to help us with that journey, again, we have the Honorable Carrie M. Dominguez with us. She has been a corporate director, or is a corporate director of the Manpower Group. She's a board member of 3 for-profit organizations, 3 nonprofit organizations, trustee, former chair at the U.S. Employment. Sorry, there's something overlapping and I can't read that. The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and then also served in the U.S. Department of Labor, as well as at the Bank of America as Director of Executive Education. So, or executive programs. So, Carrie, I'm wondering if you're with us.
Can you hear me?
I can. Excellent.
Well,
I'm so excited to talk to you.
Well, likewise, and thank you so much for the pleasure of having this session with you.
Absolutely. I can't wait for them to hear about your journey. So, so as we're getting this conversation going, specifically about your journey and about leadership, what are some of the most important parts of your journey, would you say, were turning point moments in your career, particularly early on?
Well, first, let me say, David, I'm a huge fan of Prospanica, and I'm thrilled that we're doing this board leadership program for Prospanica on behalf of Prospanica. So I just want to say I'm a big fan of them. Now, I've had a lengthy career. I actually started out wanting to be a foreign service officer, but I never quite got there. I did get into international affairs as a result of my various roles. But I never had a specific plan. I never said I'm going to be a corporate director. What I did want to do is be the best at whatever I was doing. I wanted to be accomplished. I wanted to go above and beyond what was required of me in ways of expanding my base of skill sets, of expanding my interactions, my networking, my knowledge base, curiosity, intellectual curiosity, all of these skill sets that are so prevalent today. For some reason, I've always wanted to build upon what I had. So I started my career, actually, I was recruited right out of college. I was recruited by the federal government. And I started my career there. And then I was recruited. And I said, you know, now I know how the public sector works. In order to have a much fuller background, I want to know how the private sector works. So it turned out I was very, it was a treat to be able to work in the private sector. I was recruited by Bank of America, very, very different. Went from the East Coast to the West Coast, we headquartered in San Francisco. Went from the public sector, which is a very structured, regimented type of setup. You know, if you live long enough and you breathe far enough, you move up to the next level. That's the kind of concept that I lived through. In the private sector, it was very nimble. It was so I knocked on the door of the EVP of Human Resources. So my background is all about talent. What I decided early on was that I felt very strongly that behind ideas, behind systems, behind innovation, it's the people that makes it work. And I really focus on talent, whether it was public sector, private sector, whether it was structured or unstructured. And so that was, so when I got to Bank of America, I said, I really want to broaden my base. And I was able to get into training programs, get into different types of roles. And then lo and behold, I got a call from Elizabeth Dole's office. She just gotten confirmed as Secretary of Labor. And ironically, she was looking for someone who had both private and public sector experience. And it seems like everything was pointing at me. So I was very, very fortunate to join with her. She was the first role model and mentor that I ever had. I'm an immigrant. I came from Cuba, and English is my second language. And so when she recruited me and I joined the Labor Department, it was a real privilege to have a role model and to have the experiences. So I said to her, there was something when I was at Bank of America about not being able to promote a diverse group of executives, and I like to lead an effort from the platform of public policy. And so that led me to launching the Glass Ceiling Initiative, which became the Glass Ceiling Commission, and looking at invisible barriers affecting people. So it's been a kind of, peripatetic professional career, if you will, but one that my focus was always on growing and developing in areas that I wasn't as proficient in, building on my proficiency and at the same time learning new things.
I love that. And so I'm really interested as a Latina leader, what were some of the choices that you had to make about how you thought of yourself, how you thought about the world that were most empowering or that opened the most doors sort of in the landscape as you were moving through it?
I always saw myself as a Latina and always looked for the networking support of the Hispanic community. However, I knew that the power and the influence and the sponsorships really came from non-Latinos. So my focus was to be strong in the base that I had, but at the same time broaden my network. So for example, I'm on the board of, I was a founder of Latina Corporate Directors Association, but I realized that being on the board of the National Association of Corporate Directors, where mainstream occur, would fortify those connections and enable me to recommend talent from the Latina. So you have the Women's Bar Association if you're an attorney. There's also the American Bar Association. So it's important to broaden your marketing beyond your comfort zones. I think you're much more comfortable with groups and people like you who share your culture, your background. You can say a couple of words in Spanish, they get it. So that was really warm and fuzzy for me. But I also knew that if I was going to get recommended and sponsored, the recommendations would most likely come from beyond that network. So I broadened my network and I participated in a lot of, whether it was functional, like Society for Human Resource Management, Human Resources Planning Society, or whether it was Hispanics in HR or, those types of diversity type of networks.
Wow, that's deeply insightful. I really appreciate that answer. So as you think about the skills that are required as you started to serve on boards, what are some of the core skills that you would say are most important for board members to have?
Boards like to recruit people that are considered, well, the way many of them put it, we want to bring on a board someone that we can learn from, someone that we admire, someone that can be a team player. And so my advice would be, first of all, you have to get noticed for your competencies and your expertise in whatever field. And today, in the old days, Boards would only recruit retired or active CEOs and CFOs, but the dynamics of board service have changed dramatically. You know, we've got activist investors, we've got social activists, we have global imbalances with, you know, the impact that we have on interdependencies among different nations. We have technology at the heart of everything, which is transforming every business sector. So I think, you know, in terms of skill sets, you have to be up to date, you know, on top of what's happening globally and nationally, as well as if you're going to join a board, well, how does this company make money? What do you know about the company? So the skill sets are important. You say financial, you have your financial basics. You have to bring your expertise to bear. But at the same time, you have to have the strategic mindset to see how everything fits together on behalf of the shareholders, on the wealth that you're creating. And you have to do well by doing good, looking at your communities and the support that you provide. ESG, environmental, social governance, is another pivotal component, which is so good for the Hispanic community because they really have been in the trenches of community work, community service, and those types of skill sets.
I love that. That is deeply insightful. So here's my, I guess, one of my questions. What are some of the paths, and we talked about this a little bit before, but what are some of the paths to get to board leadership, right? So say you have the skill sets that you need, like how do you end up getting on boards is probably one of the most often asked questions that I get.
Yes, and I do get asked that a lot myself. It's so there are many paths to get on a board, and it depends on the level of board. You know, I think that if I were to give advice, I would tell prospective board members to look at small and mid-cap companies as an important entry point after you've served on nonprofits. So I've served on nonprofits all my career. That was a good sense. That was a good starting point to see how governance operates. In my personal experience, I was recruited to one of the boards through an executive search firm. And the reason I got noticed was because I was highly visible. I was chair of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And so I was in the papers. I was about talent, about diversity, about the invisible barriers affecting the advancement of women and ethnic and racially diverse individuals. So, and this company is a staffing company. It's all about people. So it's a perfect fit for me. And the fact that I had that very visible role really heightened the chances of my getting noticed and being considered for that board. Another board, it was through the CEO of that particular board. I had actually worked with her on a women's initiative. And so when she expanded the board, she reached out to me because she wanted, you know, some help with diversifying that particular structure around talent, not just at the board level, but in terms of the pipeline of the organization. So that one was through a CEO. And another board was representation. I was doing a training program on corporate governance. And so turns out the chairman of the board that was there, next thing I knew I was getting. So there's no direct path, but the certainty is to make sure that you are considered in whatever field you are. You're considered, you know, someone with great knowledge, understanding, an expert in a particular field. And that's, you know, getting noticed is critical, David.
Yeah, that's what one word that sticks out to me is that it seems like you are very involved in you were involved in writing papers, you were involved in networking with various, you know, you had various relationships, you were involved in presenting, like you very much took an active role, it sounds like, in the sort of snowball that has become the successes of your career. Is that fair to say?
That's very fair to say. Yeah, it wasn't waiting to get noticed. It was really marketing yourself in a very positive light,
Hmm.
volunteering for things, going above and beyond your day job to, go out and do a little session at night on a presentation at American University, where I am an alum there, or whatever it was, just being available, writing an article. I always advise prospective board members, be the go-to person for an article that whatever, whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's marketing, try to position yourself in a way that all of a sudden, when a search firm is doing a search on names, your name pops up because you're considered an expert to the point where you're being quoted in an
Yep.
article.
So I know we have limited time with you, so I was hoping to ask one more question. Do you have a moment for that?
Absolutely, yes.
Excellent. So here's, I think this may be the most important question that we ask is, what did you have to decide about yourself in order to have all of this external success? Tell us about the inner landscape of either decisions that you made, messages that you had to give to yourself, or thoughts that you had to reinforce over time about who you were and what you could become.
And that's a very insightful question. I early on I came to the, so I'm a mom. I have two sons. I have an active professional career. I have a husband, family commitments, social commitments. There's a lot of things that are on anybody's plate, and I'm sure the listeners feel the same way. Uh, I did not want to be the bionic woman, superwoman. I just said, just don't let it drop. Whatever ball, there's some balls that you put in the air that require a little bit more attention than others. So you have to balance those priorities and you have to surround yourself. I always say the 3 C's that I go by, David,
Yeah.
competence, character, what values you bring, family values, personal values, and confidence. Be comfortable enough to be able to say, I really want to focus on this for now. Don't want to necessarily be so stretched so thin that I can't be myself and do it all. So, and I found that a support structure, having a great partner, my life
Mm.
partner, and having that type of support structure with family, parents, which is so unique in many ways to the Latino culture also, was very helpful. But I think that's the essence. I think the essence is recognizing that if you want to go and advance, you really have to show that level of confidence and engagement. I
Mm.
like to consider that term engagement, engaging at
Hmm.
every level. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, excellent. And then anything else that you would like to share with us?
I just want to say that the future bodes well for all the listeners because when you look at what the future of board service looks like, it's going to be a lot more diverse. It's going to be a lot more, it's going to be younger. It's going to be, right now, the average age is 64. It's going
Mm.
to come down to the high 40s. You have to have enough experience and expertise to be able to, to be able to offer your advice at those levels. But
Hmm.
it's also going to be functional expertise. For example, information technology is a big draw these days in
Mm.
cybersecurity and everything. And so I think that if you choose a path, whether it's marketing, IT, HR, finance, the future bodes really, really well for individuals who are preparing themselves for, and it's much needed. We need that level of diversity at the
Hmm.
board level.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I know you need to leave because you have a plane, but I do want to say I feel so honored that you have taken out time from your day to share your insights. I resonated so deeply with everything that you were saying, and I really appreciate you sharing your time with us.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. It's been a real pleasure and all the best to you and Prospanica. Take good
Yeah.
care.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Okay, bye-bye. If she had more time, I don't know about all of you, but I could probably listen to her for days. That would be my sort of my wish. Uh, so hopefully you got some new perspectives from that. The things that sort of roll around for me are that how you involve yourself really does matter. And we're going to be hearing from Jose Feliciano a little bit later, who'll be sharing his sort of insights about what he's experienced and sort of his growth as he's been literally right where you were about a year ago. So I want to talk a little bit about. This is going to sound really weird. So this is from economics, and this is called the productivity possibilities curve. And so here's how it goes, and this will relate. Trust me. So uh, in a factory, if you were to imagine creating widgets, right, pumping out widgets, you'd say that your productivity, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but if you can, the sort of curve at the end of the productivity curve is if you used all of your, like you didn't reinvest in your infrastructure whatsoever, you just had the same machines pumping out widgets. Okay, hang with me. If, however, you were to say, you know what, I want to reduce my productivity temporarily while I replace one of those machines, you would scale back productivity in order to create new infrastructure. That new infrastructure, let's say you had a widget machine that could do 1,000 widgets per minute, and you wanted to make it 2,000 widgets per minute. And maybe that's too many, maybe it's 1,000 a day versus 2,000 a day. So you would end up getting more productivity because you spent some time investing in your infrastructure. Well, if you were to do it again, right, you'd still be ahead of where you were, right? But investing in that infrastructure and changing, let's say you had 5 machines and you ended up replacing those, and eventually you ended up moving out the curve again. And so when you look at this graph, you might notice that even if you continue to invest in your infrastructure, you're 50% more productive because you put in that new infrastructure. Now, that is a widget machine analogy, but I'm going to assert that we all have mental infrastructure. We all have the ways that we think and the knowledge that we have. And as somebody who I started off my career thinking, oh, I'm going to be an engineer. And all throughout my life, the one continuous thing that I've ended up doing is reinvesting in my infrastructure and the ways that I think and helping executives at, best-selling authors, executives, et cetera, rethink how they think. And I would say that you have the opportunity to put in new mental infrastructure to help you become even more productive in your life. What I'd like to do is invite you to do something briefly based on what you heard from Carrie and based on thinking about mastery and expansion, thinking about the edge of that comfort zone being made up of fear. And yet, if you were to reinvest in your infrastructure with new perspectives, who would you become? Who would you want to be? And so imagine that you're at the end of your career. Maybe it's similar to Carrie or similar to somebody that you admire and respect. And you were going to tell the story of looking back on your life. What I'd like you to do is write down at least 5 things as to who you would have wanted to be. It may be relative to family. It may be relative to your career and your pursuits and the gifts that you had to offer in the world. But if you would, go ahead and write down 5 things, and I'll be quiet here in a second. 5 things, who you would want to have been looking back on your life. And if you would, go ahead and write down 5 things you would have wanted to accomplish? Imagine you retired or that you were looking back on your life in the greatest fulfillment. What were 5 things you would have wanted to accomplish? Go and write those down now. And then if you would, imagine, and it may be on your list, but one thing that currently you fear might not be possible. What of those things are you afraid might not even be possible? One of the things that, one of the stories I'd like to share with you real quick, and you may be finishing your list and that's okay, is I was sitting on a puke stained green couch. And as I was sitting in this living room, it was like this really ugly purple carpet. And behind me was my budget, or the amount of money that I brought in every month. And I was a preschool teacher. I was making $20,000 a year. And I knew approximately 30 people who were the families and everything of the students that I taught. And I sat down one day and if you will, I went inside. Whether you want to call it prayer or whether you want to call it meditation or what have you, I went inside of myself and I said, I want to become aware of the thing of what I'm really here to do. Right? This sort of sense of I surrender all of the, and by the way, I was tense because I wasn't making enough money to cover my bills, and I felt like, how is it that I'm sitting on this secondhand couch that those aren't even my puke stains, right? They're not even anybody that I know. And I'm sitting on this couch and like, what's going to become of my life? And I went inside, and in that moment, I decided to let something greater than me speak. And if you want to call that God, or if you want to call that the universe, or you want to call that intuition, or whatever you want to say. So in that moment, I decided to let a greater vision or version of myself emerge. And in that moment, I got the message, you're here to touch 1 million lives. And everything inside of me argued with it. It said, no way, like that's not who I am. Like that's not what I can do. I've got proof. Look, behind me is the $20,000 a year, like sheet that I would write things down on. Behind me are the bills that I can't pay. Right underneath me is the secondhand couch with these puke stains. I can't do it. I don't know. But that was the voice of, I would say, the doubting side. But in that moment, I made a fundamental choice to say, I can either believe, it's almost like the light went on, I can either believe in the things that I've proven to be true, in quotes, right? Who I've proven to be, or I can believe in who I can become. I won't bore you with the details, but 5 years later, I had a podcast that hit #1 on iTunes in 2 different categories, passing Oprah Winfrey. And what I'm here to tell you is that you won't know the how. You really won't. You won't know the how about how things are meant to unfold in your life. The only thing that you can do is be willing to say yes to the things that you feel called to do, the places you feel called to be, to serve, the ways that you can fulfill your purpose. And so some of those things that you wrote down are safe. And some of those things that you wrote down might be a little scary. I would let you know that from my experience in coaching literally tens of thousands of people, that the things that you believe aren't possible for you are the very things that truly are possible if you're willing to believe in yourself and follow the path as it unfolds. Carrie, if she were here, would probably say that her path unfolded in all kinds of strange ways. At the beginning, she said she had one career in mind, and yet she never did that career because it led her to all kinds of different things. And so I'd like to continue here with you deciding, who are you going to be? Are you going to be the person that's sort of the trajectory and sum total of who you've been, or are you willing to believe in something more that's possible for you? Regardless of whether it's the stuff that we're going to talk about now or whether it's other things, I implore you to believe in what's possible, because that will be of greatest service, and it will have you, similar to the picture here, it will have you look back on your life feeling happy and fulfilled and like you really gave your greatest gifts. And that is truly what I'm dedicated to doing in my life. That's why I'm here. The world is imbalanced today, and we need your voices, we need your gifts, we need everything that you have to be how the world sees you, experiences you, and how we bring out the gifts in others as well. So with that, we'll continue on. We've mapped out what we believe to be of board readiness or service. Is it all a part of your roadmap? Then we've mapped something out for you. I would say before we continue, I'd like you to write down a declaration. Again, it doesn't have to be about board leadership, but if board leadership is a part of your path, it may be. What I'd like you to do is write down a declaration of who you will be or what you will accomplish. Research shows that you are 6 times more likely to accomplish a goal if you write it down than if you don't. So if you would, go ahead and take a moment and write down who you want to be or the declaration you want to make. Words you might use are I commit to or I will. Excellent. Here's the thing. What you just wrote down will be challenged. It'll be challenged by outside circumstances. It will be challenged by your internal ability to believe in certain moments. I was interviewing a successful CEO who sold his company and has, since retired and has millions and millions of dollars and all of that. And I said to him, have you ever been scared? And he literally laughed for an entire minute, like rolling with laughter. And I thought, like, oh no, that was a stupid question, right? What a dumb question I asked. And he said, that is the one fundamental quality about all people who have accomplished big things or things that they didn't know were possible. He said, everyone faces challenges and everyone will be terrified. He said, the funny thing is, of CEOs of successful companies, he said, successful companies even way more successful than mine. He said, the one thing we have in common is the pain that it takes to believe in something amidst the challenges. And he said there are so many examples that he could think of right in that moment of people who were curled up, who didn't want to get out of bed because they were terrified. So if you face fear, if you face terror in your life, this is one of the things to keep in mind. You are on track and that you will face challenges ahead. And so what I'd like you to do now is write down how you want to be during those challenges. It may be that I will love myself. As strange as that sounds, I will love myself amidst pain. I will hurdle over challenges. I will push through even when I want to give up. So go ahead and write down a phrase that you will remember about when you face challenges in your life. Go ahead and write that down now. Great. You will need support. Carrie mentioned that one of the things that helped her the most as she was balancing all of the various areas of her life, she mentioned that what helped her was the support that she got from her family. And we all have various support networks. And I would say that of those that I've seen succeed versus those that I've seen fail, the thing that has the common denominator around success is an inner commitment and conviction, and that's what we're building, a willingness to push through challenges, but then also a support network. And those support networks aren't always family. They can be and often are, but support networks can be professional networks. It can be, hey, I need help with this. Hey, I'm running into this challenge. What would you do, right? It can be friendships. It can be all kinds of, it can be professional organizations like Prospanica. Whatever support you need, go ahead and take a moment and write down for the dreams that you have, what's the support that you need? Great. So what I want to do is run through briefly the program, and then we'll hear from a graduate. So here's how we've structured it. I've architected this myself, working with Prospanica, working with members of various boards to see, is this the right curriculum? So we walk you through, on the first day, leadership foundations, helping you figure out what you need to do as a leader, helping you understand change, diversity and inclusion, as well as influence, and making sure that you know how to go around the difficult landmines, as well as to have difficult conversations. And we'll introduce to you a project that over the roughly 7-month period or so, the period of time that we're going to be working together, that you have in your mind architected this process of going from the beginning action project all the way through to an ending project where you're going to be integrating this material. The second day, you're going to learn, you're going to take a deep dive into the financial acumen that is required for you to be at the board leadership level. Carrie was mentioning you need to have your financial foundations in place. We'll have a series of webinars roughly every 2 weeks or so, where we'll go through executive presence, financial acumen on a different level. We'll go through systems thinking, talent, including coaching and other elements. We'll go through performance management, high-performing teams, as well as your ability to sell ideas. Then we'll go to the conference, and many of you have probably attended the Prospanica conference. I went there last year. It was incredible. We're going to explore power and influence, negotiation, decision-making, and help you think about operational execution, as well as how you can live the values. And it says Prospanica values, but it's really the values of the group, right? What are the values that we are all committing to with each other? Because part of this is your ability to network and combine forces with other powerful people such as yourself. And then what we'll do is present the greatest learnings and integration of what we've gained thus far and what we commit to moving forward, and how we will make the world a better place through leadership, through board service, through whatever it is that you would commit to. And so in a way, we want you integrating this the entire time and taking actionable steps, taking this material and putting it into action in order to get onto your next levels of growth around leadership and or board leadership. So here's some of the faculty from last year. I'll skip this because we're going to have Jose join us. The famous Jose Feliciano is joining us. And while he's getting his camera on and his mic on, I just want to share with you, he is one of my favorite people, honestly. He is like the most genuine guy who, I hear you chuckling, so I can tell you're here. He is an absolute character and has a deep knowledge of leadership and operations experience prior to ever joining the board leadership program. He has an MBA, as you can see. He began, I love this, Jose, that you began your career in hospital housekeeping in
Correct.
1985. And now you're at, you know, a senior leader level is just amazing. And having gone through mergers and all of that. So Jose, share with us some of your experience about when you were listening to this stuff, you know, when we did this webinar approximately a year ago. What were some of the things that were going through your head?
First of all, how you doing, David? I'm glad to be, and I'm honored that I was given an opportunity to take part of this exercise. When I took part, I was actually was promoted as assistant vice president of a local or a health system in Illinois, Wisconsin area. And when I got to that level, and I'm been also given an opportunity to get executive coaching and went through the executive coaching exercise, I knew that there was an obligation for me to give back. I knew that I had to figure out why I'm in this position and I identify myself as what type of leader, especially a person of color, and how I can contribute not only around the organization I work for, but the community I serve, as well as the Latino population that I believe I represent. And so I believe I was surfing through LinkedIn and seeing an opportunity to really engage, and said, if you want to consider being a board member, just join some of these webinars, we'll apply for it. And so I did all the exercises that was asked of me, and the purpose for me to apply was multifold. One, I want to know what level skill set I truly have outside of my comfort zone. And then two is how I can affect change when I realized that there's a very small percentage of minorities in board seats across the country. And I believe that I had a skill set that can represent not only myself, the community I serve, the population that I believe I represent. And it answered a lot of questions and said, if you're willing to put in the work, if you're willing to remove yourself from what you know, this would be good. And then when I just heard your recent messaging, David, about reconditioning your mind, it's funny that you're saying that, because you and I can probably sit for 3 hours and I can tell you and share with you what I've gone through in the last 6 months. And especially after I left the second series in Florida. And when I submitted my application and then received and I still have it, my letter says that at first, let me congratulate you on April 16th, 2019, that I have been accepted to participate in this leadership program. That was, to me, I felt that there was a door opening. Didn't know what that meant, but I know that I had to go through this door, this channel, and figure out, one, who I'm going to connect with, David and the team, and then what is this all about? What are they going to prepare me for? And I went to these sessions with an open mind, knowing that this was an opportunity of a lifetime for me. And I'm so honored that I actually now, as a graduate, been asked to sit here and really share my experience with you, that hopes it really moves you in a way that it moved myself, and as well as the colleagues that went through the course with me, the relationships I built, the people that I measured against, pretty much who was in the audience, why are they participating? And every one of us, although we had a different story, it seems it circled back to, we have something to give back. We have a common goal, a responsibility, and networking like that, and watching now my peers on LinkedIn, congratulating them about some of the attributes and accolades that they're receiving. It fills my heart with gratitude, and it drives me that much more to also partake and opportunity. And I believe that this is opportunity for us to make a difference and change minds and by the way we think and how we obtain information and how that resonates in our subconscious mind and how we can be perceived as leaders of our today, as well as opening doors. For me, it's opening a door or doors for those that I believe are right behind me, not only pushing me, but creating a pathway that allows others to experiencing what I'm experiencing. And I can't be more honored, David, as I am today.
Awesome. Thank you. That here's some of the things I'd love to know. Like, what was it like in the classes, right? What was it like sitting next to other Latinos and Latinas who were going through this experience? And yeah.
First session in Denver, I walked in and the group, the first thing I said was powerful people in the room with diverse talent. I was the only healthcare executive. There were bankers, there were other type of leaders in the room. And that was exciting energy where I'm sitting next to people and I said, what do you do for a living? Why are you here? And you just hear their message and the tone that they would bring their story. And everyone has this story that they want to share, not only with that group, but to the country, to the nation, or to their community, to their organization they work for. And that, I just feel that sense of obligation that I was walking into a room of high level intellectual Latinos, Latinas that I was yearning for. And this was the opportunity, the platform to not only learn and meet people of that are in board positions, people like Evan Cleveland, people like David, that was orchestrating this new venture. I felt that I was representing a group of others within the room, and it was such an exciting time for me. I resonate on that, and I dwell on where I'm at today, and I'm sure we'll have questions asked about where I'm at today based on my experiences with you. But when I walked in that room, I felt power, energy, and a common goal.
Awesome. And then one quick, because we're going to make room for questions, like you said, one quick synopsis of, if you were to say what's happened since you've graduated and beyond, how would you sum it up?
Great question. One, when we were at the leadership conference and you seen over 1,000 people just at the Prospanica venue, and then we were isolated away from that, and we spent a day and a half, 2 days together, and was able to learn from you from most of the day and some of the topics that were brought to our attention, the exercises that we did, the why behind being there and what you should expect when you're interviewing for a board seat. And when we were giving our certificate, our plaque, and we were quick 60-second as to the gratitude, for me, I knew that when I stood up and grabbed that certificate and acknowledged the certification or the completion of these courses, I knew that I had so much more work to do. And it wasn't a downer, because it really ignited my thought. My thought was, I have an image and I need to market this image in a way that's going to gravitate others to me and me to them, that's going to say, hey, you interested in being a board member? And then I started saying to myself, I need to go seek those people out. And that's what I started doing. So I met with leaders here that are on boards with the healthcare organization I work for. And I asked them why they're on a board, and they shared with me their vision as to the why and what it meant to them. There was a personal mission, because that as to why they were spending time outside of work, away from family, to contribute, because that's a sacrifice. And then I wanted to measure that against, Jose, what are you willing to do? And what sacrifices are you willing to give up so that the things that you cherish, time with the family, being looked at as a leader of color, and how you can share this information and disseminate that across the health care system as well as outside of the community. When I walked out of and flew back home, I started reading more. I started meditating more. And I knew that what you said was I started reconditioning my thoughts about, okay, here's where I'm at today. You need to visualize where your tomorrow, what your tomorrow looks like, and then start meditating on that. Start dwelling on the thoughts, because what I learned is whatever you think about, that's what you're going to gravitate towards. And so I started looking at myself. I know I'm a vice president. Now I'm starting to think about myself as an executive vice president, as a COO. How do I start? How do I get that opportunity? And now was given an opportunity last week to interview for 2 organizations for board membership. Very nerve-wracking, I'll tell you. It was a different type of interview, and that was awesome. And I shared my thoughts with Evan, and it's just a dynamic of, I have a vision of becoming a speaker, an ambassador of not only a person of color, but a father, a husband, a person of influence in the community, and that people like David and others that I've met have an obligation to share this with others. And that's what I sensed out of that class, is that there was a passion that David wanted to share, that I want to give this away. And that's what I felt, that now it's my obligation. What I took in, I too now want to give it back, give it away, so that it changes people. And I believe that and this is a biblical term, and I apologize, that so what a man thinketh, so is he. And so I dwell on becoming a better person, a human, to give back in ways that I've never dreamed of after I left the session in Florida.
Awesome. I know we have a number of questions. For those of you that have questions, if we aren't able to answer it, please submit your question with your email address so that we can ping you back if we don't have time to answer your questions. Jose, what I'd like to do is we're going to go to the questions screen, and then also, I think the core question then for all of you listening is, what do I want? What do I really, really want? And if this is on your roadmap, here are some of the things that you should know about. Is we have a deadline of May 4th. You can go to prospanica.org/board leadership in order to digest a little bit more about the program. You can apply. I know there are people who applied and said, I don't know if I want to do board leadership exactly, but I want to be a better leader. And so I know this is a path to help me get there. And so this is also for those of you who have that thought. And so if you have other questions about the program, you can email programs@prospanica.org. So I'm going to stick around for a couple of minutes. Jose, I don't know if you have a couple of minutes, but for those of you that have questions, Evan, I wanted to see any questions you'd like us to address. And if not, again, those of you who have questions, you can do it. You can send it to programs@prospanica.org, or you can go to prospanica.org/board leadership.
Yes, thank you both. This is Evan Cleveland with Prospanica, Director of Programs. I just wanted to bring in one question we have, although first, I do want to point out a couple of things. First, the last day that we'll be accepting applications is actually April 28th. So pay close attention to that, everyone. The deadline will be the 28th of April. We just adjusted that, David, so it's a shift.
Okay.
And also to clarify, the scholarship link there is for our scholarship program, which is for undergraduate and graduate students. And one question was asked about if there is a scholarship for the program. And we don't have a dedicated scholarship for this, mainly because the Prospanica Foundation has already underwritten a great deal of the cost to the tuition, which has made it as affordable as it is. But there is a question to that, Jose, that would be great if you could try to field this. If your employer would not cover the cost, would you recommend still doing the program?
Absolutely. Great question. One, before I even went into the application process, I went to my one-up and really asked him, you know, what do you have in store? What do you see me in the next 2 or 3 years? How do you view me, my talent? Where do you see me as part of this organization? And then I was able to share with him that he permitted me to get an executive coach. So he knew, I believe that he's willing to invest in my future. And so I went to him and kind of shared the Prospanica framework as to why I wanted to be considered for this type of leadership. And I knew, because I also knew in my mind, if he was going to say, Jose, we already provided you the funds to be an executive coach, that was a pretty big number. I can't go any further than this. I was willing to finance this myself because I just truly believe the value of knowledge. You don't know until you go through this, because whatever, like David said, whether you want to be on a leadership board or not, the people that you meet in the room and you have 2 working sessions, and the material that you're going to learn about has really elevated me to thinking differently, owning more about who I am and how I perceive myself first, and how I'm going to pursue my continued growth in learning more about me, about how I can influence others. So yes, I would probably have to have funded this myself and encourage you to do so. But strongly come up with a case scenario that you would go to your 1-up and really prepare yourself. Because if you can go in there with a prepared message, a slide deck, a career path that you're saying, this is the organization I want to work for, this is what I see myself in 3 to 5 years, get this individual to agree on some of the paths that you lay out for this individual, and then say, this is what I'll need. You never know, either they'll fund it, or they may say, you know what, we'll take on half or give you some type of partial. But prepare yourself and not just knock on the door and say, hey, boss, I just want to let you know I'm applying for Prospanica leadership program. Can I get funded? I think you're better off preparing the message so that they can see the value, because you put time and effort in. They're going to see that much more in you.
Awesome. Jose, thank you for being here. I know you're a busy man, and but this is, like you said, you're giving back. You're actively, doing it. And so thank you for being here. You're, again,
No, I
love having you in the program. And I candidly, Jose, you probably have this experience too. Like I fall in love with, like, it sounds a little too weird, but it's true. Like, I have a special place in my heart for all of the people who have gone through the board leadership program, because we become very close, right? We are laying our dreams out on the line and supporting one another in accomplishing those. And so thanks for showing up today. Thanks for how you showed up with your community. And for those of you that feel inspired, this is a doorway, right? To use Jose's words. And the question is, are you going to walk through it? And you can walk through it by applying, and then, getting feedback along the way. But I would say, if you feel that impulse that, like, yeah, I kind of want to do it, then I would say just submit your application and start the process. And if anywhere along the way you said, maybe not, then you can have that conversation. But it's better to say, I feel inspired and act, than to say, I really want to, but I'm just going to wait. Because that waiting tends to create the sort of hedge of fear gets thicker. And so if the hedge is thin enough for you to move through, I would say go apply for the program, and we'll just take one step at a time. Cool. Anything else?
So me personally, go ahead.
And I was just gonna, I know we're over the time, but I did want to bring one question. There were 2 people who had asked similar questions to this. I just wanted to bring this into the conversation, and then we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Okay.
One question was, I'm not a VP at my organization, and I have worked for nonprofits. Would this program be a match for me? Another question is, would you suggest that we are at the C-suite level already, or would mid-management be okay as well?
Yeah, we had a diverse group, both in terms of the level and or the experience. We had a diversity of age ranges. I think the youngest was like 25, and probably the oldest was, I don't know, like 60 or so, right? So we had a wide range and a wide range of experience in that. And I would say that this path is a path of commitment to knowledge, to again borrow from Jose's experience. So there is a lot of leadership in it, which you can apply immediately. And then there are board specific things that if you get that in your mind, you can start speaking the language of, if you will, senior leadership to grow you along the path. And this can be used for for-profit boards or nonprofit boards. It's ultimately about service and having the knowledge to empower you to serve where you want to serve and serve where you're called to serve. Jose, is that a fair representation?
Absolutely. I think you said it well.
Awesome. Great. Again, thank you so much for Jose for joining us. Thanks for all of you who are who spent this time together. Thank you. Hopefully you got something out of it, regardless of whether you end up applying. Hopefully you do. I would love to get to meet you in Denver, and then again at the conference to get to work with you. And I'm going to also be at the Leadership Summit this year. So if you feel like you want to come to the Leadership Summit for Prospanica, I will be there. And if you have any more questions, you can ask me there as well. So, all right. With that, thank you for all of you who have gathered, and do whatever you're inspired to do, and hopefully our paths will continue to cross. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.